Alright, so in this video, what we're going to do is that we are going to take a look at the student class and see what exactly the student class involves. So we have the student class here, and basically what I have in the student class is I have the variables that I'll be using to store data on the students. Later on, especially when it comes to taking a look at the data that is in the file and editing this data, we're going to have to use an object created of the class student. So inside of my student variable, I have a number, I have a name for the student, a value for the student, and student data. And I also have a variable named delvar. And inside of the constructor for the student, you'll notice that once a student is created, delvar is always false, because what happens is only when we run the delete option does the value inside of delvar change, and what that does is that it prevents that student's information from being written to the file. So that's the purpose of delvar. That's how we delete a student out of the file, right? So when we're writing data, let's say for instance, if we loaded up the values 1 into num, John Doe into name, 1 into val, and John data into student data, upon creating this data, this object that will hold this information for this one student, delvar is going to be false. It's kind of invisible because we don't have the data that is from the file for this student. And what we will do is we'll mark delvar as true and get rid of the student, not write it to the file when we're writing to the file wherever we are. But one constructor is, of course, empty, so if it is that we're not passing any information to the student, then delvar is going to be false. And if it is that we are creating a student and we already have the student's data, we're going to pass the information when we instantiate that student, and that information will be copied to this constructor, and it will be stored in the variables for this student. And again, delvar starts off as false. Other than that, inside a student, all I have is a couple of setters and getters for all of the variables that student contain. So this is basically the main class that we're going to look at, the student class, right? And we're going to be able to actually add a student and edit a student and view the student data through the other variables that are here that we see inside of this, inside of our project here. I'll just go through the main panel with you as well. The main panel isn't really anything fancy. It's just your basic panel with a couple of your buttons, right? J buttons that have been added. So from our palette, I just drag some buttons inside of there, and for each of the buttons, I give it, of course, an action performed. So what I did was that once a button is pressed, I say we create a new View Student panel. If we clicked on View Student from the main board that we have here, and set that to true so that that View Student is visible. So from our main panel, when we click, we have the View Student dialog coming up. From the View Student, if we click on back, we go back to our main panel. And that's basically it. We did the same for edit students, add students. The same will be done for delete student. So that's all for our main classes, which is, or our main class, which is the student class, and the main panel, which is where all of our functionality will come from. In the next video, I will discuss how it is that we view the student's data, add a student to the system, and edit the student information on the system.